I feel like that may be part of the root of the cause of, feeling like you can't rely on someone, especially being scared of that death. Like, well, then possibly somebody else could die. At such a young age, I feel like that's probably stuck a knife in the side of your side for so long to where you feel like it's hard to rely on people. And that's why you've become such a soldier who fights for his own and, tries to do everything yourself and not ask for help.
Well, it's definitely, I can say that I wholeheartedly remember being terrified of my mom leaving the house because I thought that she too would not come back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by Crazy Ant Media. This week, we'll be talking about loss, whether that be someone passing away or just losing someone in your life that, you just kind of outgrow each other. There's a lot of things happening like this on a daily basis, and we think it's very important and a very touchy topic to talk about sometimes, but we are excited to dive into this because we both are dealing with these types of situations on a daily basis. And I think how I want to start off this episode is by talking about the first time we ever even experienced loss. I know for both of us, it was at a very young age. For myself, it was my grandfather who, when I was younger, I would go over to his house all the time, spend a lot of time with him. And I was probably in sixth grade. So, able to process it fully. But it wasn't, I don't think I was able to process it with my emotions, like what was actually happening. So when he died, it was definitely a shell shock type of situation. But I don't know. I didn't really cry until the funeral. Just because I felt like everybody else I loved was crying, so I should be crying too. So I would try to go back and think about these memories, but it was hard for me to even think about memories because he died when I was in sixth grade. So what, 12? I was 12, 13, and the last time I saw him was when I was 7. So it's hard to try to piece together memories in certain times. Like, for example, I never really remembered his voice, which that specifically is very hard for me. I try to, when I think about somebody, I try to think about certain conversations that we've had together. And, we've experienced a lot of different things together. Like growing up in Indiana, there was a place in Kentucky called Guntown Mountain. And I always remember him taking me there when I was younger. And we had to ride up like this ski lift to get to this certain location. It's like the old Western town. And I remember all of these memories, but I don't remember his voice. And that's kind of always, I don't know, haunted me, I guess I could say, because it's just, I wish I could remember conversations and, things going back to certain topics. And, there was no depth to these conversations. I was like 6, 7 years old, but still, it's one of those things that I feel like was very interesting and very, like, in retrospect, meant more to me than the experiences, I guess. Just hearing his voice, I wish I could remember more than certain activities that we did together. And so yeah, that was my first experience with death, and I don't think I fully processed it. I think I was only crying because everyone else around me that I knew and loved were crying about these situations. So that was my first time. And yeah, ever since then, it's been every time someone dies or every time, we go to a funeral or anything like that, that specific memory pops up like, okay, how am I supposed to process this? I remember when this happened. So it was very interesting. And I'm guessing the first time that you experienced death was your dad, right?
Yeah. So, like we kind of briefly talked about on the first episode, the intro episode there, I was 8.
Yeah.
And my brother was getting ready to turn 1.
Yeah.
Just shy of 1. Actually buried dad on the first birthday. And so, yeah, me and my sister were 8. And I remember it was And I don't know, sitting here prepping for this episode or whatever, I started thinking back about it more and more. And I'm wondering if I always have such a hard time dealing with death because that night was very traumatic for me. Because and I, this is like the first time I've actually opened up about that night of it. So I just remember I'm in my room, and my twin sister's across the way in her room. And my little brother is in my room. His crib was in my room. We shared a room. And so I guess my parents had gone to bed and everything was fine. We all went to bed normal. Everything was good to go. And the way my mom told it, and because I'm not privy until the traumatic part of it, right. But the way she said it is that I guess my dad woke up complaining of heartburn, was having some heartburn, and she got up to go get him some medicine for the heartburn, and came back, and he was basically dead, having the heart attack and or had already had it and died. And so how it went down for me is, and I'm sure my sister too, we heard my mom scream. She screamed my name, my dad's name, and was hollering Joey, 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 and you could hear her frantically in pain, pounding on him. You could hear her slapping him. I guess that for me it sounded like slapping, but I'm sure she was pounding the chest or attempting to administer CPR.
Right.
And upon over and over and over and over in the franticness of it, and then being alone, not having my sister in there with me, my baby brother just like oblivious. Hearing that, I was very scared. I had no idea what was going on. I was terrified. You hear your mom screaming in pain, and she's screaming your dad's name, and you're in your dark bedroom with just alone and terrified. And I got really scared and really panicky. And then she called, I guess, 911, and then called, I don't know who, I guess it was her mom, or somebody. It was a family relative, and she was screaming in the phone, "Joey's dead, Joey's dead." And I guess the initial thought was the baby. Everybody was like, right. I guess was asking her, "Is it the baby, the baby?" And she's like, "No, Joe, and so, and then, as a kid, you don't realize, right? You hear the words, "He's dead," and you're not, and I immediately was not processing.
Right.
I'm like, what?
Right.
You don't ever understand that when you're that young, and you just know your mom is crying, she's panicking, she's in pain, and you would guess that the initial thing, right, is to run in there, right? But I was literally frozen in my room. I couldn't go to my sister. I couldn't even get out of the bed, and I was just terrified. And so I'm thinking back, and I'm like, is that moment, is that why I have such a difficult time with death? Because my very first experience of it was so traumatic and so terrifying, and I'm just wondering if that is the mechanism then I kicked into, like, death is horrible, death is bad, death is the worst thing you can ever experience, and you don't ever want to be around it, because that 8-year-old boy was terrified in his bed to even move.
Right.
And I'm just wondering now if that is the case. And then, like you, I don't remember anything after that moment until the funeral. And then I absolutely lost it at the funeral. I couldn't be around it. Everybody wanted me to go up to the coffin and say goodbye to Dad, and to sit in that room during the wake, and all these people going up, and like, I couldn't stare at that coffin. I couldn't be in that room. I was uncontrollably crying the whole time. And then when we go out to the graveyard and like the cemetery, I guess you call it, not graveyard, that sounds so morbid, but
Yeah.
again, it was uncontrollable crying, uncontrollable, down to the ground, had to literally be picked up off the ground and carried away, because I couldn't handle it. And now I'm just, the grief of losing dad, sure, but was it more being scared of the death as opposed to the overall emotion of the loss of dad? Was it more the terror of death that had me caved in and crying like that? And I still don't know to this day if I have never grieved the loss of my father. I've never grieved it, and still to this day have not, and don't feel the need to. That's really weird, right? I don't feel the need to grieve it because it just was so different from the loss of my brother. But now I'm just thinking, did I never even process dad's death? Was it all just that terror? And so,
Yeah. Well, a few observations there, because it's like, one, I mean, this is kind of a little conversational back and forth. What do you think was more impactful for you? For me, in these two situations, what do you think was more traumatic? Was it the casket going into the ground or the actual wake and showing? For me, it's the showing, because you see someone who you've known for your whole life and what they look like, and that doesn't even really look like them, especially the embalming fluid and everything they do to get the body prepared. That was more traumatic than, well, now, I mean, I'm sure it was different for you, but now they don't even let you watch the casket go in the ground. Was that a thing for you back in the day? Did that happen?
Yes, but I think...
Were you gone by that point?
And yeah. And as we go on in this episode and we talk more about my brother's death, then, because that question will heavily more play into my brother's death. But for my father's death, I don't remember seeing him at the wake because I was taken out of the room because of hysterically crying. I can't remember seeing him there, lying there. That wasn't so traumatic to me. I would have to say that the moment of him going in the ground, but I'm not even sure I really remember that. The idea of this giant hole,
right,
and that we were talking about putting him in there, I remember that, and uncontrollably crying, and again, literally dropping to the ground and needed to be carried away. So I would guess that more so, but again, I'm just wondering, is it the terror of knowing that somebody is going into the ground and what is this all about?
Right.
Or, because I don't think I really processed what it actually meant to be dead and buried.
Right.
I think it was just more the terror of and fear of what my mom was going through that night and now what we were going through. So
right, kind of to share that experience. And what my observations were, losing somebody so pivotal, especially the man, because they're always thought after as the protector. Not, I don't want to say breadwinner, because that's not the type of situation I'm referring to. The protector, the monarch, is that the word? The monarch of the family, looking down upon everyone. So, and relying on someone this pivotal in your life, especially at a very young age. I feel like that may be part of the root of the cause of, feeling like you can't rely on someone, especially being scared of that death. Like, well, then possibly somebody else could die. At such a young age, I feel like that's probably stuck a knife in the side of your side for so long, to where you feel like it's hard to rely on people. And that's why you've become such a soldier who fights for his own and, tries to do everything yourself and not ask for help.
Well, it's definitely, I can say that I wholeheartedly remember being terrified of my mom leaving the house because I thought that she too would not come back. And so that definitely played into, like, thinking that everybody was going to die.
Oh, for sure.
Everybody was going to be that. And I didn't sleep for weeks, I don't think, because, Jesus Christ, let's get deep here. Is that why I don't sleep at night? Is that why I don't sleep at night? I didn't sleep because I was terrified that if I went to bed, I would be woken up with screams again, with mom dying or somebody dying. And wow. Therapy here. Maybe that is why I don't sleep at night.
Were you woken up by that, or were you asleep, or were you about to go to sleep, or do you remember what part of the transition?
Woken up. Out of it.
I mean, that may be part of it.
Woken up out of a sleep. And then, like we talked about on the first episode, so when you said, you brought up the patriarch of the family and the man who, he's the guy, he's the protector, the leader. So I was told over and over and over after the funeral, when I couldn't stop crying, days after, just still crying and trying to do whatever it was, to grow up. To, you have to be the man now. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. You have to be the man now. You've got a little brother and you've got to take care of him, and your mom has to do this, and you need to grow up, be a man,
at 8 years old.
Be a man at 8 years old.
Yeah.
Be a man, be a man, be a man. And somehow, like I said, that the crying was being sissified, that I wasn't a man because I was crying. And so to not be able to grieve and really have somebody ever explain to me what death was,
right.
I'm being told not only am I never going to get that, but also just stop crying because you're not going to get to grieve either. You don't understand what it is, and you can't process what it is because you need to be a man.
Yeah.
And, when you're 8 years old, what the fuck?
That's hard.
I mean, be a man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even fucking 10.
Yeah, you're not at that puberty stage yet. We're not even transitioning yet. So, I mean, it's a very interesting situation. And yeah, for me, that night that we got the call that her dad is dying, or at least is about to die, they had been estranged for a few years. My grandfather grew up in bumfuck nowhere, Kentucky, so where that did implement some racism. And when he found out that my mother was pregnant with a biracial child, then that's where that started to separate that, that relationship. And that's probably where the first start of my separation anxiety comes from. But yeah, when that happened, I really had no idea what was going on. We were still in Indiana, and he was in Kentucky, and I guess he came home from work. He was only 55. He had a massive stroke and completely, went down. But he had his own business, construction, and being out in the heat all day, and he was an alcoholic. So, I mean, all of that plays into it. And she gets the call. She leaves that night, and then I think it was either the next day or the day after that, we came down and were around all of his family. I'm meeting all of these family. I feel like for the first time, I probably hadn't seen them since I was like teeny tiny baby, not old enough to process memories. So that was very interesting. And then going into the room where he's laying down, and the only thing keeping him alive is the machine, basically. I didn't know how to process that, but I was very thankful because a key memory before walking into that room is my stepdad telling me, and I've only knew him for about a year at this point. So, I mean, it was awesome that he did this. But before I go into the room, we're having this conversation of, he's not there anymore. He's trying to get me prepared for going in. So he's like, he's not there anymore. What you're about to see is scary, and it can affect you in certain ways, and just know that that's okay. He gave me this whole big pep talk before going in, and that's something that will always stick with me. But yeah, going in and like basically gathering around, and like, I don't know, I remember touching his feet because like my mom was touching his feet, and she said at the same time that he didn't like his feet touched, so she thought that was funny and trying to get some sense of joy out of it. But I was 12, 13, just very confused by the situation. So the whole thing, I think when you're younger, it's either traumatic or very confusing. So it's hard to try to process this because, I mean, you really don't get a freaking handbook with this thing you called life. So there's no good age that you are mature enough to process death, because no matter what age you are, I feel like you're always going to process death differently. So that was a very interesting experience to be able to go in and, see him in the hospital bed and be there when they unplugged him, and just everybody around crying. And then, of course, the fucking family drama. There's always fucking family drama when there's death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another level that just doesn't need to happen. But yeah, it's still something that it's hard to process on a daily basis.
Well, so yeah, like I mean, I think that's great that your stepdad was able to kind of like give you an explanation.
Yeah.
Kind of set you up for it, kind of explain what was going on, because I think that's crucial, especially when you're younger. And you
sure.
might not be able to understand it fully then, but you will later.
Yeah.
And you'll appreciate, like you are now, that explanation and how it did help you, even unknowingly help you at that time. And not getting that hurt me, I think, in a way that and like you said, my dad was young, 32.
Yeah, that's crazy.
32.
That's
died
crazy.
from a massive heart attack, and had just had his physical for work a couple of days before. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so family drama, right? You said there's always family drama around death. And so that year after my dad died was very tough, apparently, for my mom. You're a single woman now. You've got 3 kids, one of them just a year old and the other 2, 8. And everybody apparently had an opinion on what to do, how to raise us, where to go forward now. So my mom made the decision to walk away from her career so that she could get the Social Security and the widow benefits and the children's widow benefits, of which she wouldn't have been able to get had she stayed in her nursing career. And I think that, and again, I was 8, so I can't make a solid opinion on whether this is fact or not, but
Right.
I think a lot of people on both sides of the family felt like that was a mistake and irresponsible. And I know she was going through a really hard time.
Yeah.
And so inevitably there was a lot. And like I said, we were terrified of her leaving all the time, and we didn't want her to leave, and we didn't want to be, and having babysitters, and sometimes babysitters of people we didn't even know who they were, right? Like, and now who's this person telling us what to do or not do, and where is mom? Is she ever coming back, kind of a thing. And so that was really hard. But then, because of whatever family drama was going on or not going on or whatever, I don't know, because I don't have that insight, only from an 8-year-old perspective, but she decided to just move.
Yeah.
She up and moved us and took us away from everything we've ever known. All of our friends, the only school we've ever known, the only people we've ever known, and more so, our family. And so that goes into even more loss. So now we've lost our dad, and now we're even more isolated, because now we're in this new state, in this new place, and we know nobody. We've literally lost everything that we're used to having. And that was really hard. It's like, what are you doing? And so, and unfortunately, that kind of put a strain on the family, and we didn't really, other than some phone calls, and even those started to dwindle, we didn't really spend a lot of time with our family. We kind of separated from the family, and mom became the only family. And we didn't talk to grandma. We didn't go to grandma's. We didn't go to grandpa's. We didn't see the cousins and the uncles and the aunts. And we were gone a very long time, and I felt like I lost out on my family, And then mom was never there because she was working. She had to work to support us all. So it's me and my sister basically, you know, together. That's all we had, me and her. And we had to raise Joe and kind of take care of Joe the best that we could with these babysitters. And you know, cherish every second that we had with mom because she was constantly working. So anytime she was there, it was like that's what we wanted. And I don't know, that was really difficult to just kind of. So my sister and I, you know, being twins anyway, we were never not together. So you know, it was even more so of a strengthening bonds. Like we're all we've got, and we have to do this, and we have to try to get through this kind of a thing. And so, I think it was my first thing with isolation. I felt very isolated. Like the only person I could talk to was my sister.
Yeah,
and because Joe's 1 at that age, right. 2, you know, I think when we moved out of the state 2, but still unable to really communicate, have any kind of a thing. And so you've got your sister and you're listening to what your mom is saying and you're gone. So, you know, I don't know. It was a very isolated time. And I just felt like, you know, it was a whole new world. And like, what do you do? And so we kind of talked about this too. Now that I'm processing all this stuff and realizing maybe why I don't sleep at night and all these kind of things. But I know for sure this is why back then I became very introverted and didn't talk and was very shy. I only talked when I was spoken to. That was like that at school. It was pretty much like that at home, other than my sister. It was a very lonely, scary time to where I felt like I was alone and reverted inward, which I feel like after a death is probably the worst thing you can do is go inward, right? Mm-hmm. You need that outward expansion and that ability to be with people. And yet I ran inward and it was, again, terrifying. I keep going back to that word, but I was a scared little boy who was being repeatedly told to grow up. And that was a scary, scary time for me. It just was. And I don't know about you, but at 13, you know, I'm guessing when you're thrust into the adult responsibility and having to deal with these things, it's not an easy thing. Yeah. You know, it's just not. You're not capable at that point. This isn't the fucking Old West, the 1800s, 1700s, where you were expected to be a man by 13 or 14. You know, that just wasn't the culture then. Yeah. And to be thrust into that and told to be a certain way was just, it was scary.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting point in my life too, because like I've talked a little bit about this one and on the last episode is the separation anxiety. When my grandfather died, this was the first time that my dad and I had a little rift when I was like 13. So I believe when my grandfather died, I was not talking to my father at that time, and what started that conversation back up and what had me reconnecting with him was my grandfather dying. So that was definitely a thing that I felt like shit piled on shit. It's definitely because we wanted to talk too about losing. It's not just about death. Death is a big part of loss, but loss also happens when you either outgrow each other or a stupid argument or just all of these things. And I almost feel like, because there's two different versions, it almost feels worse to lose somebody when you both are still alive.
Oh, without doubt.
Because you know that there's potential there. There's all those memories. There's all that history. But there's still that, you know, can't get past a certain subject, can't get past, like, admitting you were wrong, admitting they were wrong. Everybody has this sense of, I guess, entitlement to where they always feel like they're right or just don't even want to have the conversation with somebody. And I feel like that holds us back a lot as a society and as a human race, to just not be able to have certain conversations or to hold grudges. Grudges are a big thing that I know I've been working on my journey, and I know you've been working on hardcore on your journey. It's something that, you know, it's just experiences that are never good that you don't let go of, but it's necessary to let go of those because then you are able to grow as a person and let go of that anger. Because being angry at someone while they're still alive and not being able to move past it, I feel like is the worst, one of the worst things in the world. Like I going back and forth with the relationship with my dad, and right now we're on a really good path, and I'm really excited to see where we go. But all throughout my junior high and high school career, it was very up and down, very, in and out of my life, trying to sustain that relationship, but not being able to, see eye to eye, or just not being allowed to go over there because of grades or things I was doing over there, like getting in trouble. But it was just a whole bunch of things, like, and especially when you feel like that you get chosen over somebody else, specifically over, a step parent gets chosen over the child. That's kind of what my situation was like, and we're finally able to talk about that now and get past it and be able to build this loving relationship. But that is definitely a big part of the social anxiety, not being able to, get past that situation. And then I think that's why I latched on so hard to my stepdad, because no matter what, I never wanted to let that relationship go, because there was, like your experience growing up, there was a lot of guys in and out, some that I would try to build relationships with, to try to look at as a father figure, and that just kind of always, like, I don't want to say fell through, because that it's not my relationship. It wasn't my situation, but it just didn't work out. It didn't work out with my mother and the individual, or domestic abuse was very integral in some of those relationships, including my father's. So there's just been a lot of those situations. But then I knew there was something different about my stepdad. And I remember one time there was an actual conversation of them separating, and I got so mad. And I feel like the reason they didn't separate is because of me. And I'm so thankful that they didn't, because I wholeheartedly credit him to making me the man I am today, and he's always the one I try to walk in his footsteps, trying to create my own as well, but he's always the role model that I look up to, and I think that's the biggest reason why I am who I am. Like I said, I feel like the biggest part of separation anxiety is having someone that you idolize all throughout your life, and then just one day just gone, just and out of, for no reason, you feel like. But it's best not to blame yourself for those certain situations. I feel like, I'm rambling on, but I'm trying to make a little sense. But I feel like, loss is such a big thing, even when the other person is still alive.
I mean, without doubt, and that plays heavily into what happened after my brother. But I never tried to look at any of the guys that were coming in and out of my mom's life as any kind of a father figure. Well, I wanted no part of that. I wanted no part of any guy coming in, one, because I didn't think at that time anybody could replace my dad. And
Of
two,
course.
I was the man.
Mm-hmm.
I had been told repeatedly I was the man, so why would we need anybody else here? That's supposed to be my job. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? So the idea of somebody else trying to do that, I was not okay with it. And so, you had that, it's almost a contradiction. You're being told by all these adults to be the man, and then there's a man. Mm-hmm. So why am I being told that? And it was contradiction and confusing. And, I look back at all those years with my mom and doing everything that she did to raise us the way that she raised us, and always sacrificing everything for us. And, you do, like you said, want to walk in those footsteps and kind of become that person, or
Right.
as much as you can be. And so it is difficult when that person is not that person anymore, when they are still alive, right? Like, or they look at you as a different person, even though they're still alive, which has happened, unfortunately, for me. But, there have been people in my life though that paid attention and kind of did what they needed to do to kind of make sure, I guess, I was okay. Even if unknowingly they did it, which I think there's a couple of people in my life that maybe unknowingly helped me. One, first and foremost, is, and this is going to sound ridiculous because I was literally just dogging the babysitters that were coming in and out of our lives. But we had one, and her name was Donna, and she was genuinely kind. And genuinely cared about us. It wasn't just, okay, I'm coming over and watching these kids and I'm getting paid for it. And, she genuinely cared about us and took an interest in us and wanted to know about our lives and it treated us like family as opposed to, I'm just watching you brats until your mom gets home kind of a thing. And, I will never forget that because, and we're still friends to this day. There was a gap there for a long time where we didn't talk, where we didn't know where each other were at and different things. And I regret all that, but I'm glad that we were able to reconnect several dozen years ago and that we do talk now. Because at that age when I was 9 or I think it was about 9, I think it's, she definitely allowed me, while not bringing me out of my shell, she did allow me to know that it was okay to be me and it was okay to not be okay. I remember crying several dozen times with her, and her comforting me. And I think that her letting me know it was okay to cry because I had been shuddering all those tears ever since the funeral of, and like, you can't stop crying, be a man, grow up. And yet there were times when I broke down crying in front of her or when she was with us. And I don't think that she ever realized how important it was that she let me do that. Because I think if I kept bringing that in and holding that in and I didn't have those little escapes every now and then, I don't know who I would have turned out to be or not be, or what path it may have gone on. But knowing that somebody saw me, somebody said it's okay to do that, nobody's going to judge you, kind of a thing. She was just a very integral person in my life. Even jumping several dozen years ahead when she's no longer the babysitter, but in school when I was still hadn't found my voice, still lost, no family because all I had is my sister and my mom and my brother, my sister, my mom and my brother. We didn't communicate with any of the other family. And it was very, very lonely time for me and not very, I don't know. I didn't blend well with other kids because I was very introverted and quiet. I had a best friend. His name was John and we were very tight and everything was good. But outside of him, it just wasn't anybody. And so Donna, like, understanding the importance of certain milestones or whatever, and I'll never forget this either. It's the first big dance at school. And, like, I had nobody. No, I didn't talk to girls. I didn't talk to guys. I didn't talk to anybody who, like I said, I had really one friend. And, then you start to get down on yourself because it goes back to that. Everybody judging you. What's wrong with you? Why don't you have a girlfriend? Why aren't you? You're at this age. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. By the way, 8th grade. So you're like 13.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you should be doing this or that or kind of whatever. Like, what the fuck? But she went out of her way and took a moment to go to my dance with me. Now, you guys need to keep in mind that at this time, she's a senior in high school, right? I am 8th grade, not just, getting ready to get out of 8th grade and start high school, but I'm this kid still. And she is this grown adult, has her life. She's got her goals all set. She's ready to go. But she was still that person who saw me and said, I can't let you not do this, right? Yeah. Like, it's okay. And went to that dance with me and was like, I felt for like the first time ever, I was like the guy.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, the whole world. Because when you walk in and you have an 18-year-old as your date, right? You're 13. Nobody thinks that you can do anything. All of a sudden, the whole room is looking at you, and the whole room is like, who's this guy? And for the first time, beyond the death of my dad, I felt seen. Yeah. I felt like, wait, people do notice me, right? And it's because of her that happened. And so I will never forget that and what that meant to me and how that kind of changed the course of at least my young life and the start of me starting to come out. I don't know, but I want to take it back to the loss though, because during the period of time that my mom moved us away and we were not communicating with the family, we started losing the family. They started dying. People started dying. And the only time that we talked about the family is because somebody died and we had to go to a funeral. And it was not okay. Yeah. It was every time we went back to New York, it was for a funeral. And I was in that situation again where I couldn't handle the funeral because it was all I wanted to do was cry and break down and go away. And it's like, you know, and then I started questioning myself about like, why am I grieving these people when I don't even really know these people? Exactly. I was 8 when we left them. I'm now 20 and coming back, and I'm like, after 12 years, I don't even really know these people.
It was probably just you grieving your dad all over again.
Yeah, it was, and that kept being brought up. Oh, you're acting like you did at your dad's funeral. Yeah. Do you still not deal with death okay? And it's like, I don't deal with death okay because I don't know what death is still. As a 20-year-old guy, I still don't know what death is because nobody has allowed me to grieve it or understand it, or all I know is that people keep dying and we have to go to these things. And why do we have to go to these things? And it was, I don't know, you know, and the more and more that happened, the more and more alone I felt. Right. Like I'm very alone because everybody keeps leaving me and I don't ever understand why. I don't get to process why. And every time I do try to process why, I'm being told not to, that it's just a part of life. It's part of life. And you know, when you start to get to that age, you know, it's just, you need to be able to deal with things like that, and not being able to significantly hurt my progress as trying to grow up and be an adult. And I don't know, I want you to talk about this too, because I feel like maybe this happened to you too, but there was a point where beyond 8, right, when you're told be a man, be a man, be a man, but then there was an actual point where they expected you to be an adult. Skip your childhood. You now have adult responsibilities. You have to help your mom pay bills. You have to take care of your brother. You have to take care of this. You have to take care of that, and forget going out with your friends if you have any, which by the way, you don't, because you're always, you know, but if you want to go out or you want to do these things that you should normally be doing as a kid, but you can't because you have to be at home taking care of your brother while your mom works. And the loss of my childhood, right? You're losing people. You're losing everything that you've known to the existence of your life and where you thought you were supposed to be. And now you're losing your childhood and no chance to get the childhood back. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you had to go through that, right? You're like all of a sudden you're forced to be a grown up.
Yeah. I mean, specifically, there's this one instance with one of the previous gentlemen that were around for a decent amount of time that even fathered one of my siblings. There was this instance where, I mean, a few months prior to this, you could just tell that things were starting to dissipate. The relationship just wasn't there anymore. He was kind of just staying there as someone who helped pay the rent, but he was working on his move-out strategy. But there was this specific day where I was in 5th grade, and I remember this very, very vividly, and I can still see it in my head, where they were just arguing really bad, and they were in the kitchen, and he He bent my mom over the kitchen counter and was putting, he's a big guy and he's like probably 250 at least, like putting all of his weight on top of her, like strangling her and choking her. And this happened at least 2 times that day. And I'm literally in the living room watching it. And I feel helpless. I feel like I can't do anything. I feel like, I was supposed to be the man and the protector and all of these things. And the whole time they're arguing throughout the house, I'm following them, just keeping an eye on the situation, but I still feel like I couldn't do anything. And I remember there was this one point where she handed me the phone and told me to go outside and call the police, and I just couldn't do it. It was hard because I didn't know what to do, and at that point, I felt like, you know, I was helpless, and I couldn't. There was nothing I could do to try to save my mom or to save my siblings from this certain situation. Thankfully, I think they're young enough to where they don't remember this situation. Because, like I said, I was in like fourth or fifth grade. But at that point, after that situation, because the police came, it was a whole big thing, and I completely started to rely on myself about taking care of my siblings and try to at least do the best I could. I was still a kid, still getting myself into stupid trouble, of course, but I would still try to do what I could. Even when my stepdad came into the picture, it was still like a certain situation to where I felt like I would have to try to put everybody else before me. And that's probably where that came at in my life, because I still do that to this day, where I put everybody else before me, even if it takes me to the brink and where I feel like I'll completely break down before disappointing anyone else. But since that situation, I feel like I've had to grow up and be a person that somebody could look up to, and always the reliable one too. I always wanted to look like I had my shit together, and I didn't realize up until literally a few years ago that you're not supposed to have your shit together. If you're going through something, you need to feel that. Don't bottle it up, because I was like a pro at that. I wanted to be the reliable one, because I felt like everybody else in my life was not reliable, so I wanted them to feel like they could come to me and see me as a person that is reliable, that does have their shit together. And that is such a huge weight to put on a young person's shoulders, and to try to figure all that out. And that's probably where all of my crippling anxiety came from. That's probably where my suicidal thoughts came from at such a young age, and being able to try to figure all that out. But definitely, there's also another point in my life where I was a senior in high school, and my parents moved away. They moved down to South Mississippi because they wanted somewhere cheap to be on the beach. I am, boom, right there. But I wanted to stay and finish out my high school career because I had 1 year left. And so they left me, an 18-year-old kid. I moved in with my grandma. They left me up there, and I took it real personally. Even though it was my decision to stay, I took it real personal, and I didn't talk to them for a while, and me and my mom would argue really bad, and it was just this whole big thing to where, like, I felt like they left me when I was the one who was trying to do everything I could do to be the perfect child. But it was just something to where, like, they had to do what was best for them and to experience new horizons, and I completely understand that now. But as an 18-year-old kid, I was furious. I was pissed. So I felt like that specifically, I had to grow up, and I started making money for myself that wasn't necessarily the best way to make money, or the safest, or the legalist. So that I felt like, I had to be a man, and that's kind of where I followed in my dad's footsteps, to where, like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this money to where I don't have to rely on anyone. I don't ask anybody for anything. So that was another crucial time in my life to where I feel like I had to man up and step up to the plate to where I can take care of my damn self and you guys can just watch me. So that was very difficult, definitely, because there was a lot of different things going on in that time period. And you were talking about how, it's good to have people who you can rely on in certain situations, and you can talk to, like your sister or your babysitter or anything like that. I think for me, to make my dad happy and to feel like I wasn't alone, I was always looking for significant others, even though I'm a kid. So, I mean, significant other really means nothing really until you get to high school. But I would keep bouncing from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend to where I would just try to tell them my problems and try to get it all off my chest and not feel alone. And so I feel like that was probably my outlook on the sense of trying to handle my shit, but also rely on someone else who isn't my family, who I feel like can't handle their own shit. So that was something that I dealt with and processed. And when moving to Mississippi and spending 3 years single and not really even looking for a relationship, I realized that, it's important to rely on family because they're the ones who've literally known you since birth. Are we all perfect? No, we're not. We all make mistakes, but it's important to have those people who've been with you from hell and back and to be able to know where you're coming from, especially the mental health aspect, especially when you're having down days for no specific reason. They're the people who you rely on most, and especially those friends and family that you adopt into your own, like you and Emily. Like, you guys have become so much of like my support system that it's crazy. Even when I'm going through something like that's so small, like even when we were doing something goofy and I was like, hey, that made me anxious, and then you called me and they're like, no, do it on your own time. That doesn't need to be a thing. But that comes from me wanting to be the perfect person and always wanted to be the person that someone can rely on. And that's still something that I'm trying to grow out of. And that's probably because of trying to be the perfect person so I don't lose somebody who's still alive. Well, so that's probably where that comes from.
So my journey over the last 6 years or so, definitely I have learned and am still learning how to not put everybody else first, that it's okay to put yourself first, because self-care is critical. In order to help take care of other people, you have to be able to take care of yourself first. And I'm just now learning that and over these past 6 years. But I went the opposite way of you after. So when I was young, I was the kid in my parents' eyes. I could do nothing wrong. I was the greatest to ever walk the earth. I could do whatever I wanted. You were the best at everything. You will be the best at this. You will be the best at that. And I had that. And I had that confidence and that sense of worth about myself. And after the death of my dad and over the period of time, and I don't know if this was because the baby child became the last thing from my dad or whatever the reason may be, but I all of a sudden was not that, and my brother was, and I was. And, I don't want to say this because I don't think my mom legitimately ever tried to do this, but I felt pushed aside. Like, you're not the one anymore. He is. And everything is about him now. And so to go from the light of the life to, yeah, you're a kid too, kind of it was like, oh, well, wait a minute. I thought I was the best. I could do anything. And so I was trying to deal with that. And then, being forced to grow up and everything, I could have gone in two directions. One, like you, where, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to just do whatever it takes and I'm going to be responsible and I'm going to show everybody I can do this and I'm going to be the one everybody turns to. Well, I did that maybe for half a second, and then I went the other way. I started to become bitter and angry that I wasn't the light of my mom's eye anymore, and that I was being forced to do things when all my friends were doing other things. And why is this fair? So I went the other way, and I became very self-centered and very all about me. And I'm not talking about the self-care kind of way. I'm talking about the self-absorbed asshole kind of a way, where everything was about me and I didn't give a fuck about anybody else. And I became very irresponsible. I became very reckless. I went down like just paths of doing all kinds of bad things and not being home and terrifying my mom about where I was or where I wasn't and what I was doing and what I wasn't, and putting my family through all kinds of hell. And my sister, who had always been there by my side and always been kind of like, well, you can keep taking care of Joe. Fuck this shit. And I started not worrying about her anymore. And like, fuck you. I'm going to go hang out with these people and do this and do that. And you stay your ass home and take care of Joe and do these things. And it was bad for a series of years. It was really bad. And I went down like horrible paths of all different kinds of bad things. And like, the thing that woke me up really, it was two things. So the one person that I could always rely on, that was always there, that was never not by my side and could get me through things, and together we could conquer the world, wasn't there anymore. She got married at a young age, 18, and left, went to Germany. And now it's me. And my brother, who's at this point only 11.
Yeah.
And I'm mad and I'm angry and I'm bitter and I don't want any part of, why can't I escape? Why can't I go away? And that's how I looked at it. I looked at it like she was escaping what I was trapped in still, even though she didn't. She was very responsible. She had a job as a teenager. She did everything right and was a very caring and good person for our brother and for trying to take care of the family and did everything right. But I looked at it as another person leaving. I've lost another person in my life, the closest single person in my life, literally a twin. It bonded like same. Closest person is now gone, has left me too. And I spiraled. Because I was alone. I had lost again and again and again and again. My mom didn't treat me the same way anymore. And nobody was like, I didn't know what to do. And I just was bad. I was a really bad individual at that point. And I had this younger brother who, at the time, I didn't really realize I was the man figure in his life. I was the role model in his life, whether I wanted to be or not. And I was, and I was doing all these horrible things, and he was seeing all these things from this person that he idolized. And I was doing all of this crazy shit. And it was one instance where I don't even remember how I got home. But when I woke up, my little brother wasn't there. And you have to realize that we shared a room pretty much from the time he was born. Like I said earlier, his crib was in my room. Like we were always, that was the thing. And he wasn't in the bottom bunk, and he wasn't there when I woke up. And what I did notice in the bottom bunk was my vomit all over it. And having to hear from him and from my mom that I puked all over him when I got home, and having to know that he had to go through that humiliating experience, right, as an 11-year-old. Like, what the fuck is this guy doing coming home and puking on me? Who am I to deserve that? I'm just trying to live my life, kind of a thing. And that moment kind of starkly woke me up a little bit. I'm not going to say it sparked me into full responsibility and being a grateful, good on person, But what it did was it sparked me to the point where I understood that this guy, this young man, was the single most important thing in my life at that point. That I had a responsibility to him to be better than that. And that's when that whole dynamic of a relationship kind of changed. We started to get really close, and as he started to get older and could start hanging out with me and doing things, we got really, really close and started to have this bond where, like, it becomes past the point of you've raised him for so long and then you kind of treated him like crap because you're an idiot kind of a thing. But now he's here and, he's like, and I've always said this and I say this over and over and over again, but he's like, or was like a son to me and my best friend and my brother all in one. So I guess, now is a good time to talk about, like we talked about when we first experienced death, but when did we see death first, right? Or know death, but like, when did you experience death for the first time? And his loss is the first time that I, after all those years, understood death, understood the loss, of what it meant to lose somebody like that. It was gut-wrenching for me because he was the single most important person in my life and the best individual that I've ever met in my life, the kindest, most genuine person, and was doing everything right and had his whole life going. And so to be taken like that, right? At 8, I don't understand dad. I don't know. He's good, bad. Is he doing everything right? I don't know. I'm 8, but I understood this and I was mad and I was hurt about why him. And so I had already started to have feelings about the guilt of why him? I'm the one who did all the bad things. I put my mom through all this kind of crap. Why him? Like I said, we had just gotten to the point over the years, like where that relationship had become something that I don't think I can ever replace in my life. I just don't. I don't think I can ever replace that. And when I went through so much during that death, and maybe still to this day, because I don't know, you and I have talked about it a lot, but I've never really kind of put it out. So when he died, I was supposed to be there. And I was kind of still being selfish. So I wanted to go see a girl that I liked and I wanted to go do something there. And I found every reason to not show up there that day, to not be there on time, because I was more worried about me instead of going to spend time with him. And I think I'm going to regret that day every day for the rest of my life. I'm trying really hard to process that it's not my fault, but I still think maybe if I had been there, had I not been selfish and I could have been there, would he still be here? And so I have that guilt that I carry with me all the time. And I feel like I've lost a piece of myself with that because I can't get that back. I can't get that piece of me back that he was. And so through all that, and you have to understand when I say this, I am not calling out my family. I am not calling out my mother. She did everything that she possibly could and in the best kind of a way. But I was already carrying the guilt of not being there, of letting him down, of just dropping the ball on that. And so to have to process that loss, which I did not do, I did. I had a very hard time at the funeral, and I unlike my dad, I never left his side. I was there the whole time by the coffin. And I couldn't stop touching him, or I couldn't say goodbye to him. And I wanted to be with him. I wanted to crawl in there and just be with him. And I wanted it to be me instead. But when you hear other people say that, which is apparently the case at the funeral, the people that you have left in your life are basically saying that they wish you weren't there. And that, and ever since that day, so like my mom literally said the wrong son died, and that it should have been me. And so I was already carrying that guilt on myself, but then to hear that that's what people wanted, that's what they think should have happened, then I lost my family, my whole family that day, not just my brother, because ever since that day, it's been different. My sister processed the death differently, and we've never been the same since. My mom processed the death differently, and we've never been the same since. And I don't know if I can ever get any of that back. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, to hear your mother say that she wishes you were dead. And I wanted to be dead. I wanted to die. I was right there with her. I wanted to be in that coffin instead of him, and it should have been me. But here I am. I'm not. I'm alive, and now I'm dead to my family, which is how I have felt every day since then. I am dead to my family. And even though I have tried, and you were just talking about this, about how you wanted to never let anybody down, and you wanted to be the person that everybody could look up to and be, I tried so hard to be that person after the death. And nothing was ever good enough. Nothing is ever good enough. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. And I feel the whole time since, it's been, nothing will ever be a replacement for what he could have been. And therefore, why am I here? Why am I still here? And so trying to comprehend and deal with that, I too, like, that's the first time I ever thought about committing suicide, because I really just wanted to go away. Nobody wanted me. Nobody thought I should be here anyway. And why was it? And I would rather just be with him. And I really thought about doing that. And thankfully, I had people there, 2 people that saw me and was like, you can't do that. That's not what he would want you to do. That's never what he would want you to do. And if by the grace of God, for those 2 people, I would not be here. I would not be here. I would have done that. I would have ended my life that day. But I am still processing that the loss of my family. It wasn't just my brother that day. It's my family. And what you see isn't always what the reality is. A lot of people think that me and my family are very close, and we are not. We are not. And I wish we were, but we are not. And I don't know how to get that back, because I have tried and tried and tried to just be the person they want me to be. And who I am apparently is not good enough, who is not who they want me to be. And I don't know if I can ever be the person they want me to be, because I'm on this journey of self-discovery and who I am, and I don't think that it's ever going to be who they want me to be. And I just feel, and I know I'm taking up way too much time here, but I feel like who they want me to be is Joe, and I can't be Joe. And I don't know how to deal with that. So, like loss and grief, his death was the first time I grieved someone. Mm-hmm. Actually grieved someone, and still grieve him. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I just, and I'm thankful every day for you and for Emily and for, there's so much of Joe and Emily. I can't even begin to tell you how much of him is in her that gets me through every day. But, I don't know, but I think what I'm trying to say, and then it's all yours. But I think what I'm trying to say is for everybody out there listening, sometimes the person that actually dies isn't the only one that you lose. And it's okay to not be okay. I'm not okay all the time. I'm not. I'm still trying to process everything. I'm still trying to process the guilt. I'm still trying to figure out who I am and is that ever going to be good enough? And so if you're going through anything like that, if you are not alone. You are not, because my whole life I felt alone. My whole life I felt alone. And I'm not alone. And you're not alone. And I'm hoping by sharing this, we can help people. We can help people who feel like they're alone.
Yes, most definitely. And I mean, a big phrase that has always stuck out to me that I don't think is true at all, specifically in some certain circumstances, but definitely in ours, that blood is thicker than water bullshit. That's just a fucking phrase. It's not true. It's good to find the people who you make your family. Those are the people who stick with you more than the people who you're actually related to. It's always good to find those people and to continue moving forward. And I think this is a great way to lead into our next episode, which is going to be grief, where we'll be going to be talking a lot about this situation and a couple of other situations that we have going on in our life that we deal with on a daily basis, that we feel like, we take responsibility where there's no responsibility to be taken. And that's very deep, and it cuts really deep. But it's just something that we put on our shoulders that we can't. We gotta turn the weight into air and to continue moving forward, because that's what they would want for us. They don't want us to be sad. They want us to enjoy the life that they had, the experiences that we had with that certain individual, and to keep moving forward for them. I think that is very important. So yeah, next episode is going to be titled Grief. We're very much looking forward to that. That's going to be even more waterworks than this one was. Trust me, we're going to be diving into a lot of stuff. And like we say on ItCaf, like we've been saying on social media, we're just trying to put this out there and help people one person at a time. And I think that is so important, to let everybody know that you are not alone. Be sure to console the people who are in your circle. You have to rely on individuals, because you can't do it by yourself. I know you want to think you can, but you cannot do it by yourself. You need to just speak it to somebody. They don't even have to respond. Just to have somebody in the room to listen to you while you're going through your experience is so critical and so important. So remember, everything is okay, and continue moving forward, because you have people who love you, and you have people who will continue to support you no matter what you're doing on your journey. And I think that is very important. And I think that is a great way to close out this episode, just to let everybody know that you have people. Sometimes it's not your family, but remember, everything's okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. Everything's okay. I knew. I warned everybody. I can't open up about him and not lose it. But everything is okay. And I guess just to close it out for me, don't feel bad for being happy.
Yeah.
Don't ever let anybody disparage you for being happy and living your life, even if it isn't the life they think you should be living. It goes back to that self-care thing, right? We're all on a journey. I'm still on a journey. I'm still dealing with it, as obviously you can tell. But I'm in a good place. I'm in a better place, and you should never let anybody make you feel guilty for being there. So anyway, yeah, and whoo, man, just yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We will see you guys next time. Be sure to follow us on social media. Feel free to email us as well. We are here to hear your stories as well. It's very important. Like we said, one person at a time. That's all we're trying to do. That's all we're trying to do. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.